cold Moscow night in 1999, as the Kremlin's lights were about to go out, Yeltsin sat at his desk. A single page lay before him. He wrote only 2 words on it, to Putin. That letter was never disclosed to the public. But years later, some information leaked from inside the Kremlin says that Yeltsin transferred not only power to Putin, but also secrets. What was written in that letter? Was it a warning, or was it a plan? Today, we're unveiling the most secret testament in Russian history. Before you continue watching this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear will be the kind of information you'll never find in history books. There are dozens of books written about Boris Yeltsin's final days. Hundreds of documentaries were filmed, but none of them fully told what happened that night. Because that night, in those cold corridors of the Kremlin, a handover took place that would change the course of world politics. Yeltsin wasn't just handing over a country. He was entrusting the codes of an empire, secret files, dirty secrets, and perhaps even a revenge plan. Who's the hero of this story? Boris Yeltsin, Vladimir Putin, or an invisible third force hidden between the two? The answer is far more complex than you think. December of 1999. Russia is on the brink of economic collapse. Yeltsin's health is deteriorating day by day. People are in the streets. Oligarchs are at the Kremlin's door. Western leaders are waiting by the phone. Everyone's asking, where is Russia going? And who will go? Yeltsin had already found the answer to this question, but he didn't tell anyone, because if he had, perhaps the plan would have collapsed. The course of history would have changed. That's why silently, at midnight, in the Kremlin's most secret room, he summoned Putin, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. At that time, Russia's prime minister, but a name no one knew yet. KGB background, cold gaze, a man of few words. Western journalists describe him as Yeltsin's shadow. Russian oligarchs see him as a temporary figure. But Yeltsin saw something in Putin that others couldn't see. Perhaps something he himself never had. Discipline, composure, and ruthlessness. Yeltsin knew that these 3 qualities were needed to keep Russia standing. And Putin possessed all 3 in abundance. That night, Putin entered Yeltsin's room and looked at the desk waiting for him. On it were an envelope, a file, and a photograph. Without saying anything, Yeltsin handed the envelope to Putin. When Putin opened the envelope, he saw 2 pages of text inside. The first page was short and clear. Its title was, Who Rules Russia? The second page was more complex. It had names, dates, account numbers on it. Yeltsin wasn't just leaving Putin a testament. He was giving him a map of Russia's dark world. According to the information we have today, there were 3 fundamental messages in that envelope. First, control the oligarchs. Second, don't trust the West. Third, finish Chechnya. But behind these 3 messages lay a deeper meaning. Yeltsin wasn't just giving Putin instructions. He was showing him his own mistakes. I couldn't succeed, Yeltsin was saying, but you can. Because you're not like me. You're not emotional. You're not weak. You're the kind of leader Russia needs. So why did Yeltsin choose Putin? This question has been debated for years. Some say Yeltsin was under family pressure. It's known that his daughter Tatiana supported Putin. Others paint a darker scenario. They claim Yeltsin made a deal with Putin to protect himself and his family. The content of this deal is simple. I could give you power, you give me immunity. And indeed, as soon as Putin came to power, his first act was to sign a decree providing full immunity to Yeltsin and his family. Coincidence? Perhaps. But there's no such thing as coincidence in the Kremlin. What was in the file Yeltsin left Putin? The answer to this question is still not fully known. But some former Kremlin employees and intelligence officers gave small clues years later. This file is said to contain secret agreements made in the final period of the Soviet Union, connections established with Western intelligence organizations, the oligarchs' dirty dealings, and even some assassination plans. Yeltsin was entrusting Putin not just with a country, but with that country's entire dark side. And Putin used this trust very well. The first months of 2000, Putin officially becomes president. Western leaders underestimate him. Bill Clinton describes Putin as a temporary leader. Tony Blair says Russia is no longer a threat. But Putin quietly begins implementing his plan. His first target is the oligarchs, because during the Yeltsin era, they're the ones who really run Russia. Berezovsky, Guzinski, Khodorkovsky. These names are more powerful than the Kremlin. They control the media, run the economy, determine politics. Putin has to send them a message. And he does. 2001. Putin has media tycoon Vladimir Guzinski arrested. Charged fraud. But the real reason is different. Guzinski's television channel NTV is criticizing Putin. Putin doesn't allow this. Guzinski flees abroad. But the message is received. Oligarchs who oppose the Kremlin will face consequences. A year later, Boris Berezovsky shares the same fate. He flees to London. But Putin's arm reaches there too. In 2013, Berezovsky is found dead in his London home. Official statement: suicide. But no one believes it. The biggest blow comes to Mikhail Khodorkovsky, Russia's richest man, owner of Yukos Oil Company. But he has one mistake: getting involved in politics, supporting opposition against Putin. In 2003, he's arrested on his private jet. Charge: tax evasion. The trial process is a show. Khodorkovsky spends 10 years in prison. His fortune is confiscated by the state. The message is very clear. In Putin's Russia, no one can be more powerful than the government. The first article of Yeltsin's testament has been fulfilled. But the real question is, did Yeltsin really want Putin to be this harsh? Or did Putin interpret Yeltsin's testament in his own style? Some historians say Yeltsin actually wanted a more balanced transition. But Putin used the authority given to the fullest. Perhaps Yeltsin foresaw this. Perhaps he wanted exactly this. Because Yeltsin knew that only a strong hand could rule Russia. Democracy experiments had long since failed. Economic chaos still continued. The West wanted to see Russia weak and fragmented. Putin was the only person who would disrupt this game. And now we come to the second article of the testament. Don't trust the West. Yeltsin's relationship with the West was complex. On one hand, he was the leader who dismantled the Soviet Union, opened Russia to capitalism. The West applauded him. Time magazine named him Man of the Year. But Yeltsin gradually realized something. The West didn't see Russia as an equal partner. In the West's eyes, Russia was just a market, a raw material source, and a nuclear power that needed to be kept under control. NATO's eastward expansion deeply wounded Yeltsin. Because he had been promised, NATO won't expand. But the promise wasn't kept. Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, they joined NATO one by one. Yeltsin saw this as a betrayal, and he told Putin not to forget this. Putin took Yeltsin's warning very seriously. In his early years, he tried to cooperate with the West. He even supported America after the September 11th attacks. But over time, he realized Yeltsin was right. The West would never see Russia as equal. The 2008 Georgia crisis, the 2014 Ukraine crisis, and Crimea's annexation. All of these were echoes of that testament from Yeltsin. Putin thought the West was encircling Russia, and he was making counter-moves. Yeltsin's second article was also being fulfilled. Third article, finish Chechnya. This was the bloodiest, most complex article. During the Yeltsin period, Chechnya was an open wound for Russia. The First Chechen War was a complete disaster. The Russian army was defeated, thousands of soldiers died. Chechnya effectively gained independence. But Yeltsin knew this situation couldn't continue. Chechnya's independence could be the beginning of the Russian Federation's disintegration. Dagestan, Ingushetia, Tatarstan, all autonomous republics could follow Chechnya's example. Russia could fragment. That's why Yeltsin gave Putin a clear order. Finish the Chechnya issue. How you finish it doesn't matter. But finish it, and Putin finished it. The Second Chechen War that began in 2001 was extremely ruthless. The Russian army didn't make mistakes this time. Grozny was completely razed. Thousands of civilians died. Human rights violations reached their peak. Western countries protested. But Putin didn't care, because he was fulfilling Yeltsin's testament. And his strategy worked. Chechnya was brought under control. Local leaders like Ramzan Kadyrov became loyal to Putin. The region achieved stability. But at what cost? We're still debating the answer to that. Now we look back and see this. Yeltsin's testament wasn't just a letter. It was a roadmap. And Putin followed this map exactly. But one thing changed. Putin went outside the framework Yeltsin drew. Because over time he realized that just protecting Russia wasn't enough. Russia needed to be made a great power again. And for this, Yeltsin's vision wasn't sufficient. Putin created his own vision. And the Russia we see today is the product of this vision. So did Yeltsin foresee this? Perhaps. Perhaps Yeltsin knew Putin would surpass him. Perhaps he wanted exactly that. Because Yeltsin's greatest fear was Russia's erasure from the stage of history. At that time, Russia was weak, divided, humiliated. Yeltsin couldn't accept this. That's why he chose Putin. Because Putin was the only person who could get Russia back on its feet. But there's another side to this story. Yeltsin's testament didn't just contain political instructions. There were also personal messages. And these messages were perhaps the most important. Because Yeltsin was addressing Putin not just as a leader, but as a human being too. Power will change you, Yeltsin was saying. Over time, everyone around you will start lying to you. No one will tell you the truth. You'll be alone, but you must accept loneliness. Because this is leadership. Did Putin hear these words? Did he understand? Or did he ignore them? We don't know. But we know one thing. Putin became lonely, as Yeltsin said. Around him are only loyal men. No critics, no questioners. Everyone approves of him. Is this healthy? No. But perhaps Yeltsin was right. Perhaps loneliness is necessary to govern a country like Russia. And now we come to perhaps the most interesting part of Yeltsin's testament. According to some sources, in the file Yeltsin left Putin, there wasn't only information about Russia. There was also international intelligence information, secret agreements, weaknesses of Western leaders. Yeltsin had been at the center of world politics for years. He knew many leaders closely. He learned their secrets, and he gave these secrets to Putin. Because he knew this information would be Putin's most powerful weapon. Did Putin use this information? Absolutely. Interference in the 2016 American elections, hacking of Western politicians, disinformation campaigns. All of these are part of a strategy. And this strategy perhaps began with Yeltsin's testament. Because Yeltsin knew Russia couldn't defeat the West with military force. But it could win in information warfare, cyber warfare, disinformation warfare. And Putin did exactly that. But there's another dimension to this story. Yeltsin's testament wasn't just a letter written to Putin. It was also a message to the Russian people. Yeltsin knew the Russian people wouldn't forgive him. Because he dismantled the Soviet Union, collapsed the economy, dragged Russia into poverty. But perhaps through Putin, he could be somewhat forgiven in the people's eyes. I made mistakes, Yeltsin was saying, but I gave you Putin. He will correct the mistakes. And indeed, that's what happened. After Putin came to power, the Russian economy recovered. With rising oil prices, the Russian people's living standards increased. People became hopeful again. Russia began to be discussed as a great power again. Yeltsin's testament had worked. But what cost? When we look at Russia today, what do we see? A powerful but isolated country. Economically developed, but politically oppressive regime. Effective in the international arena, but also considered dangerous. Is this what Yeltsin wanted? Maybe yes, maybe no. But one thing is certain. Today's Russia is a direct result of Yeltsin's testament. And now we come to the biggest question. What was really written in that letter? The full text was never disclosed. Perhaps it never will be. Because that letter was an agreement only between Yeltsin and Putin. And both took this agreement seriously. Yeltsin gave Putin the key to Russia. And Putin used this key to completely transform Russia. But the story doesn't end here. Because the long-term effects of Yeltsin's testament are still continuing. The Ukraine crisis, Syria intervention, Wagner Group activities in Africa, energy wars. All of these are links in a chain. And the first link of this chain began with the envelope Yeltsin handed Putin that night in 1999. Some historians say Yeltsin saved Russia by choosing Putin. Because at that time Russia was really facing the danger of disintegration. Putin came and kept Russia together. But some historians say the exact opposite. Yeltsin condemned Russia to authoritarianism by choosing Putin. Because Putin gradually weakened all democratic institutions and transformed Russia into a one-man regime. Which is correct. Both could be. Because history isn't this simple. Yeltsin's intention could be good. He might have wanted to save Russia. But results don't always match intentions. Putin perhaps went much further than Yeltsin imagined. Perhaps Yeltsin didn't foresee that the monster he created would grow this large. But there's one truth. Yeltsin's testament is one of the most important documents of 21st century world politics. Because that document forms the basis of many events we're experiencing today. Russia's relations with the West, energy policies, military strategies, all are based on the principles written in that testament. And here's the most interesting part. In that file Yeltsin gave Putin, there wasn't only information about the past. There were also predictions about the future. Yeltsin wrote how world politics would develop, what strategies the West would follow, what opportunities Russia could exploit. And Putin formed his strategy using these predictions. Yeltsin's vision transformed into Putin's actions. So what happens now? Is Yeltsin's testament still valid? Or has its time passed? The answer to this question is uncertain. Because Russia is currently at a turning point. The Ukraine war has completely isolated Russia. Economic sanctions have intensified. Relations with the West have reached a breaking point. In this situation, will Putin remain loyal to Yeltsin's testament? Or will he chart a new path? We don't know. But we know one thing. Yeltsin's testament will remain as one of the most important documents in Russian history. Because that testament was the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. One of the cornerstones of the new Russia, rising on the ruins of the Soviet Union, was the principles written in that testament. And perhaps the most important question is, if Yeltsin saw today's Russia, what would he think? Would he be proud, or would he regret it? We'll never know the answer to this question, because Yeltsin died in 2007. But before dying, he said one thing: I chose Putin because I loved Russia. These words perhaps explain everything. Yeltsin was a leader with mistakes, with weaknesses, but who truly loved his country. And in his last breath, he tried to hand over Russia's future to strong hands. Today, we're living with the consequences of that decision. Putin took Yeltsin's testament and built his own empire. Russia became a great power again. But freedoms decreased, opposition was silenced, media was brought under control. Is this a success or a tragedy? The answer depends on who you ask. Inside the Kremlin, somewhere, a copy of that envelope might still be sitting. Perhaps Putin occasionally takes out that letter and reads it. Perhaps he remembers Yeltsin's words, "Power will change you." But don't forget Russia. Did Putin forget? Or does he remember every day? We don't know. But we know one thing. That testament wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the end of an era, the beginning of a story. And that story is still continuing. This is the story of the testament Yeltsin left Putin. One night, two men, one letter, and secrets that changed the world. Perhaps we'll never learn the complete truth. Perhaps the words written in that letter will remain a secret forever. But one thing is certain. What happened in the Kremlin that night is affecting all our lives today. Because history is sometimes written with a letter. And Yeltsin's letter became one of the most important letters of the 21st century. If this story taught you anything, it's this. History isn't only written in books. History is written in secret rooms, in midnight meetings, in moments no one sees. And sometimes, a leader's last words can be more important than their entire life. Yeltsin's testament was such a document, and Putin took that document and made history. Now it's your turn. After listening to this story, what do you think? Did Yeltsin do the right thing? Did Putin remain faithful to the testament? What will Russia's future be? These questions are still waiting for answers. And perhaps only history can give the answers. But one thing is certain. The testament Yeltsin left Putin will never be forgotten. Because that testament is the story of an empire's rebirth. And this story isn't over yet.